The history of human civilization. Have you ever wondered how humanity went from wandering small bands of hunters to building sprawling cities filled with towering monuments and complex systems of writing, trade, and belief? Today, we're stepping into the long, winding story of human civilization, a tale filled with innovation, power struggles, and mysteries that still puzzle us. Stay with me until the end, because each chapter of this history sets the stage for the next, and the deeper we go, the stranger and more fascinating it becomes. The dawn of civilization. We begin around 10,000 years ago in what's often called the Neolithic Revolution. People started settling in one place, domesticating plants and animals, and experimenting with farming. Villages grew along fertile rivers like the Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, Indus, and Yellow. Imagine the shift. Instead of chasing herds, people planned harvests, stored food, and faced the challenges of living together in larger groups. This wasn't just survival. It was the first step toward organized societies. But how did farming spark kingdoms, laws, and religions? The dawn of civilization marks a pivotal period in human history, beginning around 10,000 BCE, when societies transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled agricultural communities. This shift allowed for the growth of permanent villages and eventually cities, fostering the development of early civilizations. Key advancements during this time included the domestication of plants and animals, which led to the agricultural revolution, and the rise of writing systems, such as cuneiform in Mesopotamia and hieroglyphs in Egypt, enabling humans to record history. Technological innovations like the wheel and metalworking revolutionized agriculture, trade, and warfare. Social structures became more complex, with leaders, priests, and organized religions emerging to unify large populations. These early civilizations, including those in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, laid the foundation for the modern world by shaping governance, culture, and technological progress. Mesopotamia and the first cities. In Mesopotamia, cities like Uruk and Ur rose from the mud plains. Here, the wheel and writing were invented, temples dominated skylines, and rulers claimed divine backing. Clay tablets recorded debts and myths, while armies defended land and trade routes. Civilization, it turns out, was messy, filled with floods, rivalries, and gods demanding loyalty. And as Mesopotamia thrived, others watched and learned. So who picked up the torch next? A long time ago, in the fertile land between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, there was a place where the first sparks of civilization were lit. This place was Mesopotamia, which we now call the cradle of civilization. Around 3000 BCE, people who had once wandered in search of food began to settle in the rich soil, learning how to farm and tame animals. They built homes and began to form communities that grew into the world's first cities like Uruk, Ur, and Lagash. Life in these cities was like nothing before. At the heart of each city stood towering temples, called ziggurats, where people honored their many gods. The rulers, sometimes kings and sometimes priests, oversaw everything, ensuring the crops grew and the people thrived. In these bustling cities, there were markets filled with traders from distant lands, and people began to write down their stories, laws, and trades using a new system called cuneiform, the world's first form of writing. Mesopotamians were innovators. They mapped the stars, invented the wheel, and developed a number system that we still use today, especially in measuring time and angles. But perhaps their greatest gift was the Code of Hammurabi, a set of laws that laid the foundation for justice in society. In Mesopotamia, everything seemed to happen for the first time. Cities, writing, laws, and even the beginnings of trade and culture. It was here, by the banks of these ancient rivers, that the blueprint for modern civilization was first drawn. Egypt, Kingdom of the Nile. Along the Nile, another civilization flourished. Egypt's pharaohs built monuments so massive that we still wonder how they managed it. Beyond the pyramids, though, Egypt left behind medical papyri, solar calendars, and a centralized state that lasted for millennia. Floods of the Nile gave life, but also forced cooperation and planning. Their art and tombs whisper stories of belief in the afterlife and eternal order. But while Egypt seemed stable, other lands were brewing revolutions of their own. A long time ago, in a land where the vast desert stretched endlessly, there was a river that gave life to everything, the Nile. This river flowed through ancient Egypt, turning the barren land into a flourishing kingdom. The people of Egypt understood the magic of the Nile. Its floods brought fertile soil that made farming possible, and its waters connected every part of their world. Around 3100 BCE, Egypt became unified under its first pharaoh, Narmer, marking the beginning of one of the world's greatest civilizations. The Egyptians built their cities along the river, where the power of the Nile touched everything they did: trade, farming, and even their beliefs. The Egyptians were known for their awe-inspiring monuments, like the Great Pyramids of Giza, which were built as tombs for their kings, or pharaohs. These massive structures were meant to help the pharaohs in their journey to the afterlife. To the Egyptians, life was a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, and the gods they worshipped, like Ra, the sun god, played a huge part in this eternal journey. The Egyptians also mastered writing, using hieroglyphics to record their stories and history. They were pioneers in science, astronomy, and medicine, creating the foundation for many advancements that would follow. But what really made Egypt special is how deeply connected the people were to the Nile, which gave them everything they needed to thrive. For thousands of years, Egypt stood as a civilization of power and mystery, its legacy etched in stone, in stories, and in the very flow of the Nile. It was a kingdom that truly lived by the river's rhythm, the Indus and ancient China. Farther east, the Indus Valley cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, show planned streets, sanitation systems, and trade reaching distant lands. Yet much of their script remains undeciphered, leaving a civilization wrapped in silence. In China, the Shang and Zhou dynasties emerged, forging bronze, creating ancestor rituals, and shaping philosophies that would influence Asia for centuries. But what happens when civilizations meet through trade and war? That's where the story turns global. A long time ago, along the banks of the mighty Indus River, there was a civilization that remains shrouded in mystery. This was the Indus Valley Civilization, a land of thriving cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, where the streets were laid out in perfect grids and homes had bathrooms and running water, centuries before anyone else thought of it. The people here were master traders and craftsmen, creating beautiful jewelry and pottery. Yet their written language remains unread to this day. One of the greatest mysteries of ancient history is why they disappeared, leaving behind only their advanced cities and secrets buried in the sands of time. Far to the east, in China, another great civilization was taking shape. Along the Yellow River, the Shang dynasty began around 1600 BCE, building a world of bronze, written records, and ritual. The Shang people communicated with their ancestors using oracle bones, and their skills in bronze casting are still admired today. But it was the Zhou dynasty that set the foundation for much of China's future, with the teachings of Confucius and Laozi guiding the hearts and minds of generations to come. China, with its innovations in paper, silk, and gunpowder, became a land of wisdom and invention. The Great Wall rose as a symbol of its strength, protecting a civilization that would go on to influence the entire world. Both the Indus Valley and China, separated by vast lands, shared a deep connection to their rivers, which brought them life, sustenance, and a legacy that endures to this day. Greece and Rome, power and ideas. The Greeks gave us democracy, drama, and philosophy, while Rome built roads, aqueducts, and laws that still echo in our systems today. Both civilizations rose through innovation, but also through conquest, slavery, and politics, as brutal as they were clever. Their myths and histories still shape our imagination of heroism and tragedy. Yet when Rome fell, many feared civilization itself was collapsing. Was it truly the end or a new beginning? Long ago, in the land of Greece, a small civilization that loved ideas, exploration, and beauty began to change the world. The Greeks, living by the sparkling Mediterranean, built cities like Athens, where the seeds of democracy were planted. Imagine a place where ordinary citizens could have a voice in how the city was run. That was Athens, a place where ideas about freedom, philosophy, and the pursuit of knowledge blossomed. Great minds like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle asked the big questions about life, ethics, and the universe. They were thinkers, but also artists, creating stunning works that are still admired today. The Greek warriors, like those from Sparta, were fierce, but it was their thinkers and artists who would shape the future of the world. Far to the west, Rome was rising, influenced by the Greeks but taking a different path. The Romans were not just about ideas, they were about action. They built an empire that stretched across vast lands, from Britain to North Africa, and from Spain to the Middle East. They created legions that conquered and kept the empire together, building roads, aqueducts, and magnificent buildings like the Colosseum. But Rome wasn't just about power. It was about law, citizenship, and a republic that gave birth to modern systems of government. While the Greeks pondered life's great mysteries, the Romans built a world around their ideas, creating a lasting legacy of power and thought that still influences us today. The stories of Greece and Rome, of thinkers, warriors, and builders, are the foundation of the world we live in now. The Middle Ages. Survival and growth. Medieval Europe is often painted as dark, but it was a period of transformation. Castles, cathedrals, and universities reshaped life, while trade routes like the Silk Road connected Europe, Africa, and Asia. Islamic scholars preserved ancient knowledge, while new inventions like the mechanical clock and windmill pushed societies forward. Still, plagues and wars reminded humanity how fragile progress could be. So what finally broke the cycle and sparked something new? After the fall of Rome, a new chapter began, the Middle Ages, a time of survival, struggle, and eventual growth. Imagine a world where kingdoms were scattered and people lived under the constant threat of invaders, famine, and disease. The Dark Ages saw the collapse of centralized power in Europe, and the world was plunged into a time of uncertainty. But even in these dark times, there were sparks of light. Feudalism became the system that held society together, with lords offering land to vassals in exchange for loyalty and military service. Castles rose from the earth, standing strong against invaders, while farmers toiled the land, producing food to sustain life. The church played a central role, offering hope and unity to people who faced daily hardships. Monasteries became centers of learning, where monks copied ancient texts and preserved knowledge from the past. But as time passed, things began to change. Towns grew into cities, trade routes reopened, and the Renaissance sparked a new interest in art, science, and the human spirit. It was a time of growth, not just for kingdoms, but for ideas, creativity, and culture. The Middle Ages were a period of survival, but they also laid the foundations for the vibrant, dynamic world that would follow. The Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. The Renaissance brought a rediscovery of classical ideas, combined with fresh curiosity. Art, science, and literature flourished with figures like Da Vinci and Galileo. Meanwhile, explorers crossed oceans, linking continents in ways never seen before. Trade, colonization, and cultural exchanges accelerated, often violently. Empires expanded, but so did knowledge, setting the stage for revolutions in thought. But the biggest shift was still ahead, the Industrial Age. The Renaissance, which began in the 14th century, was a time of rebirth, a period when Europe rediscovered the power of art, science, and learning. After centuries of the Middle Ages, the Renaissance sparked a creative explosion, especially in cities like Florence, Venice, and Rome. Great minds like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Galileo redefined art, architecture, and science, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and expression. The focus shifted from medieval religious themes to the celebration of human potential, innovation, and the beauty of the natural world. At the same time, the Age of Discovery was unfolding. European explorers, driven by curiosity and the desire for wealth, began to venture far beyond their borders. In 1492, Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic, stumbling upon the Americas, while Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa to reach India. These voyages opened up new trade routes, connected distant parts of the world, and reshaped the global map. The Renaissance and the Age of Discovery were intertwined, as the newfound knowledge and innovations of the time helped fuel the explorers' journeys. Together, they marked the beginning of a new era of global exploration, cultural exchange, and intellectual enlightenment. It was a time that forever changed the course of history. The Industrial Revolution and modern world. Machines, factories, and steam engines transformed daily life in the 18th and 19th centuries. Cities exploded in size, nations competed for global influence, and new ideologies like socialism and capitalism took root. Electricity, medicine, and communication shrank the world into something recognizable to us today. Yet, wars, revolutions, and inequality showed that civilization's march forward was never smooth, which raises the question, where is it heading now? The Industrial Revolution was a game changer, a period of transformation that began in the late 18th century and swept through the 19th century. It started in Britain and changed the world forever. Imagine a time when people worked by hand and cities were small. Then came the steam engine, factories, and machines that could produce goods at an unprecedented speed. Textiles, iron, and coal powered this revolution, while railroads and ships connected countries like never before. As factories grew, so did the cities. People moved from rural areas to urban centers in search of work, and life became faster, louder, and busier. This era also sparked new ideas about capitalism, labor, and social change, which laid the foundation for movements and new technologies that would shape the future. The modern world, which followed the Industrial Revolution, was marked by continuous growth and change. The rise of electricity, the automobile, and new communication technologies like the telephone and the telegraph created a world that was more connected and faster-paced than ever before. It was a time of breakthroughs and challenges, where society shifted from agrarian to industrial, creating the foundation for the world we live in today. The 20th century and beyond. The last century saw humanity at its most destructive and its most innovative. 2 world wars tested the survival of nations, while nuclear weapons and space exploration redefined what civilization meant. The digital revolution connected billions, allowing knowledge to spread instantly. We now face challenges of climate change, technology, and identity as a global civilization. The story is still being written, and we're part of it. The 20th century was a whirlwind of change and transformation, shaping the modern world in ways that are still felt today. It began with the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution and quickly saw the rise of new technologies, global conflicts, and significant social shifts. The world wars were defining events that reshaped borders and societies, leaving scars that would influence generations. But amidst the destruction came rapid advancements in science, medicine, and technology. The invention of the automobile, airplanes, and television revolutionized daily life, while the discovery of antibiotics and vaccines helped save countless lives. The century was also marked by massive political changes. Communism and democracy clashed in global struggles, while movements for civil rights, women's suffrage, and independence reshaped nations. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union defined much of the second half of the century, culminating in the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Soviet Union in 1991. As we moved into the 21st century, the pace of change accelerated. The digital age dawned with the rise of the internet, smartphones, and social media, connecting people around the globe in real time. Globalization brought people, ideas, and economies closer, while climate change, artificial intelligence, and space exploration present new challenges and opportunities. The 20th century and beyond are defined by unprecedented change as the world continues to evolve at an astonishing pace, shaping the future in ways we can only imagine. From farming villages to skyscraper cities, the history of civilization shows us one truth. Humanity survives and adapts through creativity, cooperation, and sometimes conflict. The questions we face now about power, technology, and survival are echoes of the same struggles faced thousands of years ago. If you've stayed with me on this journey through time, you know how much more there is to uncover. So, subscribe for more mysteries of history, drop a comment on which era fascinated you most, and hit like if you want to see more stories that connect the past with the present.